Welcome to the We Don't Play podcast show today, David. I'm so happy you're here, first of all. Thank you so much for the time and the ability to be with you here on this amazing show. How are you today and how are you feeling?
I'm feeling great. I'm excited to finally end the year. It's been an interesting but fun year, and I'm excited today. I'm really excited.
Me too. I feel like there's so much to cover. And when you look back at the year and you look at the new year, you know that there are new things that people are expecting to see. And sometimes when something is new, you don't really know what it looks like because your eyes have never really seen it. And speaking of eyes and lenses, cameras, that's where you hold the forte. And I know a lot of people pick up their phones these days and call themselves professional photographers because they have an iPhone 15 or some great phone, but I know there's more that meets the eye. How did you even get started into the camera, the photography, and the business? Where did this stem from?
A very good question. I'm going to go back to my childhood. When I was about 13 years old, my dad happened to be a photographer in the Vietnam era. And that was something really dramatic for him at the time and for a lot of people. I remember at 13 years old going through his drawers, and I was just curious, and I saw this album, and it looked like a packet of photos stuffed in there. And I remember pulling this out, and I opened up these albums and these pictures, and I saw a lot of random photographs where he was taken in the army base. And I also saw some photographs that really impacted me and changed my perspective in life a little bit. That life appreciation. What I saw was two army men setting up a grenade launcher. I saw a lot of anxiety. I saw bravery at the same time. And I saw a lot of things in just one photograph that captured my eye. I remember staring at it, and I couldn't believe my eyes. I was just 13 years old, and it was opening my mind to what's out there and the things going on in today's world with the wars that are going on. And that right there, Faber, in a sense, it inspired me to become a photographer because I felt that that photograph said more than a story. It was very impactful for me. And it just really hit me, and it took me places and make me wonder, and it made me think about a lot of things in life. At a very young age, I decided that after seeing that particular photograph and some other ones, I wanted to capture photographs that had a happy ending instead of a sad. When I was 16 years old, I walked up to a photographer at an event. I was at what we call quinceañera. So they have the chambelans, which is the boys that stand up with the quinceañera for their dance, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Quinceañera, it's a traditional, event that happens when a young lady turns 15 in the Hispanic and the Mexican culture, and that is very strong. I am based in Texas, and I was born and raised in South Texas, and the culture is very, very strong, and our culture, and that's what I was doing there that night when I met up with this photographer. And I remember clearly that I was looking over his shoulder. I was just very curious. I was only 16 years old. I was a good 30 years ago. Anyways, I was looking over his shoulder, and I was just curious. I didn't know how to ask this man if I could work for him or help him out because I was curious about learning what he was doing. Finally, I remember he just paused and said, "Hey, do you want to work for me?" And I was like, "Yes." He goes, and he says, "Well, you can start by getting that light over there." I thought I would never hear that from him. And I was like, "Oh my God." I was like, I could grab that light and your camera bags and everything you want. I was just excited to learn it. And I remember after that, every day after school, I would get off of school, I would go work at the studio. And mind you, back then, we were still developing negatives from 35 millimeters and medium formats. I remember doing things like cutting up the negatives, sending them off to the lab and stuff like that, and taking orders. And I remember also being eventually the studio manager when I was about 18, 19 years old. And the funny thing is that I would only get paid like $30 a week. But I did not mind that. For me, it was like my dream come true. I also remember my dad being kind of against it. It's like, you need to find a profession that, I guess, like, he saw you like a starving artist. But I was very passionate about it. That's how it all got started, really, in a nutshell. It was something that really inspired me. And till the day, I'm 47 years old, and I'm still very passionate about photography.
That's beautiful. That's an amazing story. Like looking at a photograph and now you're taking photographs of others from an album photo folder to now digital, and people can easily see it on a cloud. So it feels so good. When you think about your first business gig and now, what do you see that has changed, and what can you look back at and appreciate?
Okay. So I think when I first started let me just step back a little bit about when I started in that age, that era. Like, even very young, there was just the beginning of, when I was about 20, I would say about 21, 22 years old, Kodak introduced the first digital camera. And there was the first digital camera that consumers could get their hands on. I remember that photographers at the time, traditional photographers, which I would look up to, and I still look up to, these were the guys that were shooting with the medium format, the negatives and all that good stuff. But they had a rapport, or they knew about them through word of mouth mostly. Or maybe they would put an ad on the newspaper. And it was season, sometimes they knew about the seasons, like graduation season, so they'd set up for that, or for weddings and stuff like that. So they would prepare themselves for that. They would send out an ad and do all their bookings like that. And it was great. And so going back to your question, it was wonderful for them. But the process of developing a photograph was longer than what it is today. Today, by a click of a button, you get it immediately. One thing that I learned was that in today's world, they want things right now. They don't want tomorrow. They don't want to wait for an hour from now. Everything is instant. I remember that a lot of these photographers, that were traditional photographers with film, fell back a little bit. And some embraced the digital world, and some were. And so one of the things that I want to say is that, going back to your question, I was part of that. But at the same time, I was very young. I went to a program right after high school called Digital Imaging Technology. They had just opened up that program. It was almost about a year old. I took a dive into that. It was all about digital design and photography, digital photography. And so I remember graduating for that, and that was wonderful. And that just helped my photography business to the next level. It put me ahead. But going back to the question, one of the things that I learned back then and in today's world is that you always have to be changing with time. And there's no more newspaper stuff. I mean, no more newspaper ads. Today's world is your online presence, and that is huge. If you're not jumping on this as a photographer, I believe that word of mouth is wonderful. I've done that for many years, and I've worked on word of mouth, and that is also a great form of advertisement. It really is. But if you want to have a higher or a bigger reach, I think that as a photographer, it has to be through your online presence, Google and all that good stuff. And there's so many ways to do it.
I appreciate you giving us that feedback. You kind of took me back when I was in college and I did photography class, and I had to develop a film, leave it overnight, and then come the next day and they're like, okay, it's done now. Compared to now where you just snap and publish on Instagram or TikTok. So I feel like you appreciating the traditional way and holding it in your hand has given you that tenacity to build. For people who are photographers today who'd never experienced that and are new, like the Gen Zs or the millennials, or some people who just didn't get that opportunity, how can they use the same vision board you have and create their own canvas that can give them a better picture for what they're looking for?
Okay, so like I said, in order to take advantage of the whole thing, as a millennial and a Gen Z and stuff like that. And this new generation is beyond me. They know so much. But I think that over the years, even cameras and phones have really simplified the process, like 1,000%, right? And so now it's so easy for anyone to pick up a phone, a camera, and say, I am a photographer. Even on your phone, you can put your finger on it and do light adjustments. And you can do, focusing adjustments, which is like something unheard of for us when we were growing up. The biggest piece of advice, if you can have a new appreciation for photography, is going back a little bit and learning about the process, how it all started. I think that is important because we have, as a traditional photographer, and that's why I go back to my mentors that I had when I was growing up. One of the most important things they taught me is that there are rules to photography, and we have forgotten those and buried those over the years because I think it's simplified everything. And like I said, this new generation is just like, well, as long as it looks good, da da da. But as a professional photographer, we are seeing 1,001 errors in these photographs. And don't get me wrong, you can get away with it to a certain extent. And then it doesn't feel seamless. It feels kind of sloppy and stuff like that. So that's one of the recommendations I say. If you want to do this professionally, take the time to go back and learn those rules of photography and also learn how the process started with film so you can understand it better. A lot of people, like I said, they're forgetting what an ISO is or aperture or shutter because these digital cameras are doing it all for them. Basically, it's a computer inside a camera.
Right. You've just mentioned something that got me thinking. What do you think about AI now with photography?
There's two things, right? We are seeing AI in Photoshop. The other day, when I was celebrating with my family during Christmas, I saw some commercials popping up from Photoshop that were just targeted for that, hey, we have AI. And watch this. If you have a picture of a bride, we can add a bunny next to it. Or if you have a waterfall, we can add birds around the waterfall and make it more rainforest looking, and we can add it here. And because of what I went through when I did that change, I like to always reinvent myself with technology and stuff like that, but never run away from it. AI, I am embracing AI and whatever the world throws at me. In the technology world, we cannot run away from that. Now, there's two things that I think that are going to happen with AI. For one, as a photographer, is going to make things a lot easier to push out, for instance, an event. When a photographer goes out there and photographs an event, let's say it's an 8-hour wedding, we usually come back with perhaps 1,000, 2,000 images. And then from there, we have to do a selection. And then from that selection, we have to go ahead and edit these. Well, there's already programs that take all the files that you've taken throughout the event, and AI will do the actual selection and edit those photographs for you. And I'm talking about in a matter of a couple of seconds. It will turn the whole process around that quick. Before, it would take up to a week. So I think there's going to be more of a mainstream on that end. Everything is going to be pushed out, which is going to help us photographers. There's always going to be that activity. The creative mind is always going to be more powerful than AI. It's original. And I believe that AI could only go as far as our imagination. AI is built from our imagination, but we are the creators at the end of the day. You know what I mean? So if you see historic, a dinosaur, a photograph with a dinosaur and a Corvette or a Lamborghini, it's so unique. And it's like, wow, we created that Lamborghini. We know about those dinosaurs. We've done so many compositions with that. Mm-hmm. We were the creators. We are the originals, the pioneers. We are that. We are the creators. So I think that being a creative in the photography world is still very important. And I think things like AI, competition, but not competition, it gets me excited. The possibilities you can do with AI. Never turning a blind eye, embracing it and learning from it. After 30, 35 years of being a photographer, and seeing cameras evolve in a short amount of time. In the last 10 years, digital cameras have come a long way. I really believe that in a short while, they are going to incorporate AI inside the camera. We're starting to see some of it already inside a camera. Keep in mind that a digital camera is basically a computer. It has a chip, it has a screen, it has buttons. Now think of the buttons as a keyboard, think of the screen as a monitor. They have computer chips and motherboards, a digital camera. So I really believe that in the near future, you're going to be able to use your camera and have a photograph taken at the same time. It has post-production on it. It may have elements. As a photographer, we're always looking for distracting elements. It might just eliminate that for you. Create the images you're looking for by typing in a couple of prompts in the camera. I really believe we're that close to doing that. Why not? To save us even more time.
Exactly. I love that. No, I appreciate you putting it like that, because I never thought of a digital camera as a computer. We don't think about it. We just think, oh, camera. But you saying it is different.
If you think about your iPhone, what is your iPhone?
It is a computer.
And what does it have attached to it? It has a camera. iPhones are starting to look more and more like cameras. It's like, what do they do? Every time they release a camera, they upgrade on the OS. And what's the second biggest thing they upgrade?
The camera.
So we have 4 lenses on these cameras. The megapixels on it are incredible. Like, now they're throwing like 50 megapixels, 100 megapixels on these phone cameras. Still, smaller sensors, but you can get away with it in a lot of things. If you're not printing them, if it's for online, for bloggers and stuff like that, people are doing it all day long. They're getting away with it. So what makes you think that Canon, Nikon, Fuji, these cameras out there are not going to say, hey, wait a minute, enough is enough. It's time for us to battle back. What if there was like, I don't know, it's crazy. Maybe a camera would turn into somewhat of a phone.
That would be crazy.
Why not?
It's possible. Yeah. No, I appreciate this insight, and I think it also gives people a perspective to look at differently, because it also sparks imagination, and that's what pictures do. That's what art does. Life is art. What we see, the skies, the sun, these are colors, these are things God painted and created for us. So we, in our own image, in His image, is also creating that element of surprise for people to see us without our own lens. So now I'm thinking too, for you, when it comes to the different styles of photography, I know someone's probably going to be thinking, okay, I love David's story and I love what he's doing. What are the big key highlights for you that you focus on when it comes to photography, that if somebody wants to work with you, they know, okay, David Pezzat is the person I'm going to come and talk to about this? What are those areas and industries? It's like your barber. If I'm going to stick with this barber, I'm not going to move because I'm used to this person. This person already knows me. But photographers, they keep shuffling. People have different people, unless it's contract based or it's corporate based. So within your niche and what you've been experiencing, what are the different styles of photography that you can give a client that would really appreciate and be part of that success story with you?
The biggest thing with me is offering my clients something unique and different, using my imagination and thought behind it. A photograph, as you know, and I explained to you how I was inspired by a random photograph that my dad took while he was in that moment also, is what inspired me to become a storyteller. And when you capture a photograph that raw, that cannot even be rehearsed. These people did not rehearse that. It was just happening. And if you can do that in any event, in any situation, as a photographer, you have to place yourself as a documentarian and a historian. So you are a historian and a documentarian, and you archive these images that are happening in milliseconds. For instance, any event, when they're exchanging their vows and they're getting married up there, There's so many things that are happening. Maybe people are not aware, but if you have a big appreciation for life, like you just mentioned, you'll be able to see these things. And also training your eyes, training yourself. When the couples are exchanging their vows and rings, don't just focus on that. Focus on the overall picture around. For every action, there is a reaction. If you step back from looking at the altar and look to your right-hand side, and this happens 99% of the time, look over to mom's expression. Look over to dad's expression. You will see something so genuine, so beautiful and wonderful. You will see parents tearing up. You can see grandmothers also feeling that moment. But most important, as a photographer, you have to sync up with the energy and sync up with the vibes of what's happening and what's unfolding. And I say vibes also because everyone produces different vibes in certain moments. So if you're in sync with that, I guarantee you're going to get the best images of those moments because you're synced up with the whole energy of the room. So what I like to do is having my camera close to me and I'm documenting something that's unfolding. And there's a lot of things that are unfolding in seconds. And I find myself very active. I come home beat. It's like a full day of workout at the gym. But I love it. And I think that's my way to work out, right? That's a way from sitting in the computer all day long to capturing these images and running around. That is good physique for me. That's good. So staying in sync is super important. Another thing that I like to talk to my clients before they book me or before we do any event or sessions is making them know and feel that I'm very transparent and I will communicate with them throughout the whole process. As a photographer, you are the professional and you need to guide them just like you have guided me through SEO. As a photographer, says it's the same thing. You know how many complaints of customers I've had that's gone with other photographers and like, this photographer, his portfolio says one thing, but then we're at the event and we're just standing there looking at each other. And when there is downtime, you are the professional. Take your clients, do something with them, work with them. Keep in mind that sometimes these are the first time they're taking professional portraits for many couples, And so they don't know, or this is the first time getting married, period, for them. So they don't know what to do. As a photographer, you're a visionary. You have to visualize a lot of things. On our downtime, even if we're triggering an emotion, it's between the church and the cocktail hour, and I have them all to myself. And this is something I call a private session. I'll ask them, hey, you know what? I see these beautiful trees and this tunnel-shaped area. Walk through that and hold your wife. I want you to feel that same moment feeling when you first met her. Just embrace her. And by the time you know it, they're doing something very wonderful together. Just be intimate. I try not to communicate as much once I get them started. Once they are warmed up and got it started, I step back slowly and allow them to be themselves. And those are the images that I'm looking for. Communication is very important with your clients. Storytelling is another one. And most important is making your clients feel comfortable with you. Because sometimes in today's world, I don't get to know my clients until the day of their event, the day of their wedding. They book me online, they'll book me sometimes, through text, over an email. And I don't get to know them until the day of. So my biggest thing is for them to feel comfortable. The sooner I can get them to feel comfortable in front of the camera with me, the sooner I know that I'm going to be getting those images that I'm looking for. Keeping in mind that I am the documentarian and I am there to document everything that's unfolding on their event. That's what I do with my photography, bringing that creative mind to every event and letting them know that not two couples, not two weddings are the same in my eyes, and they're not. Just like they're unique in their own way. I don't see them all the same. I see myself like the creative director, and these are people that, have the lights And that sounds like almost like filming a movie, right? It's like documenting, these are the main characters, and I'm going to document them.
I love that. Wedding photography is a big thing, especially when people are getting married almost every weekend somewhere in the world. So I know you also do Airbnb photography. How is the experience? Is it different from weddings? I know this is a completely different scenario, but when it comes to the photography side, the client communication, do you get a dynamic difference significantly, or is it one of the same thing when it comes to communication and deadlines?
Yes, so Airbnb is something that I recently picked up on. Let me just say a few things. If you're just getting started with photography, or if you're a veteran photographer, you might be seeing shifts in the industry. I'm talking about the wedding industry. Let me just say, 10 years ago, I was doing weddings that were 300, 500 guests, 1,000 guests. And it was wonderful because the pay was great, you know? It was really, really good. But now I look this up, like the trending words right now is like intimate, micro wedding, stuff like that. So it's something that has changed in that aspect where things are getting, I don't know, a smaller scale percent, those smaller budgets and stuff like that. And that's one of the reasons why I also wanted to shift into other things and diversify a little bit with photography. And you have to keep it real with yourself, stuff that you enjoy doing. So in photography, there's so many areas you can jump into. Don't think that it's just in events is where the money is at. There's so many areas that you can go to. And I was talking to this FBI agent, client of mine, and he was like that we have photographers that we also hire here for forensic or take pictures of things at crime scenes and stuff like that. They get paid very well. And so there's real estate photography, there's product photography, there's so many areas that you can go to, and they're also very good and they're very profitable as well. So going back to your question, yes, I recently decided to go into Airbnb, and I found this very rewarding. I love it. I go into homes and I am able to capture the home that's all set up, and this is something that I opened up and is doing very well now. If you look me up on San Antonio, I am coming up on the first page of Google when you type in San Antonio Airbnb photographer. And so I've created a portfolio also, and I get calls, and I love going out there. And I think it's not related to weddings, it's not related to events, but I think it's something that kind of takes me away from that for a little bit. It gives me a break. 30 years of doing this, right? So don't get me wrong, I still continue to do events, and I'm very passionate about it. But Airbnb photography allows me to be creative as well. Well, no, you're taking pictures of, no, not necessarily empty homes, but homes that are set up. The thing about Airbnb photography, you also have to be a creative. And people don't realize that. And the reason why I say this is because you have to create images that are inviting for the people that are going to be staying there.
Yeah.
And how do you do that? It's just almost like product photography, but in a huge scale, in a home. You know what I mean?
True.
So for me, when I go out there, it's all about the angles. It's all about, as a matter of fact, when I walk into an Airbnb home, one of the first things that I like to do, I leave my equipment. It's like I learned this over time. I play the part of somebody coming to your Airbnb for the first time, and I want to experience it all. Have you ever stayed at a fancy hotel? The sheets are like really nice, and the pillows are, you know, propped a certain way.
Like you don't even want to touch them.
Know, it's like a present, right?
Yeah.
You walk in there, it's like, oh man. And then there's certain things that captures your eye, right? It's like, even like the way they set up the toilet paper, you know, the way they fold it. Sometimes they make a, I don't know, butterfly out of it. I was like, wow, that's so thoughtful. And I am a person that I appreciate things. I appreciate things that I see, little things like that. And that goes a long way in my book when people do that, or the way they set up things. So I do a walkthrough of the house, and I'm taking mental notes. And so I write it down, like, oh man, I walked in the bedroom, and the first look was like, boom, I saw that, and they had a big entertainment center with a TV, and they'll have a statue or something like that, or you go into the bathroom and they have the sign. There was a cute one that says, wash your hands. And it was also related with God and how cleansing yourself and stuff like that. It was very thoughtful. It was in the bathroom. And I was like, wow, that's great. When I walk through the home, I pick up the camera. I'm usually looking for that wide angle lens, or that lens that will allow me to portray that image that I had when I first walked into the house. And it captured my attention. The little things that they do, a lot of these people really go out loud on their Airbnb. And a lot of times they're themed. Some Airbnbs, not all Airbnb homes are the same. There are themes. There was one that I remember seeing that was themed for a Valentine's. Like a very romantic. I mean, they had uplighting that were red. The sheets were red. They had the red room. And then even sex toys. It was crazy, but it was an Airbnb. The whole thing was from a sense of genius, right?
It's like a playhouse.
And so you capture that in a sense where it makes sense to people, what they were doing, what they're trying to portray with their Airbnb home. And also that's inviting, the angle, all that great stuff makes a big difference. The lighting also. And I like to do a lot of hiding and exposing or highlighting things with adding light on certain elements or certain areas of the home. And that's a little tip, a little trick.
And I love that. Something that you mentioned too about that Airbnb is big, because when I think about Airbnb, I'm thinking about pictures. Like, what's going to make me choose this Airbnb location from this other one is the picture. And most times, yes, the address, the streets, how close is it to where you're going to be. But those pictures, if they don't look good, even though it's on the street of gold, someone won't really know that because they've never been there physically. So you telling those pictures, like taking pictures of the bathroom, the way things are set up. When you look at hotels, people pick those hotels because of maybe how they roll the sheets. Like, people don't even know that decisions are made with those little things, but you capturing them is big, adds value to their business. So just hearing it from you, I know that a lot of people would want to siege through your lens so that it's not just a picture that someone took on an iPhone or Samsung, but more importantly, a picture that can tell 1,000 stories without you having to speak up.
Let me tell you about this. Either I read it or heard it from someone that there was a research done from Airbnb, the company, when they first started. And there was a couple of Airbnbs in New York when they first got started that they weren't booking as much. And then there were some other ones that were booking all the time. They wanted to know, they wanted to get down to the problem, the root of it, and say, why? What is going on? So when they looked at their profile, saw that the pictures, the Airbnb units or homes that had bad pictures were getting booked less, way less, even though they were in the prime locations. And the ones that were also in New York that had beautiful pictures, inviting photographs, were the ones booked solid year-round. So that is huge, favor. That's the power of photography. And that's one of the things that as soon as I finished college, I went to work for an advertising agency for several years. One of the most important things I learned as a photographer working at an agency is creating a photograph that says a million things. Our ads were very simple for some campaigns. The biggest thing was a photograph that says everything. Mind you, this was 2 decades ago. It was the photograph. And then it had just the title and the rest. Those were the ads that we would produce. There was a lot of thinking behind the photograph, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So when people see it, they can relate exactly what the company is about. Whether it was a server, product, or a person. It was personal branding. And the person in its element. It just had the title and the rest. And those ads were the most powerful ads.
Wow. It's like less is more.
Yes, less is more. Simplifying it. And I think nowadays, people are becoming less readers and more visuals. And I think 20, 30 years ago, we were onto something. It's the same as today. So that's what I'm doing with Airbnb. It is awesome. I did go into a little bit of SEO also. One of the things that I do add to the Airbnb photographs that I produce for the clients is also adding the geotag on there, and also adding the description on a photograph and a caption and alt text, and you could also even add tags as well as keywords. So these are things, and what's more beautiful is that you can do this on several programs such as Photoshop, Lightroom, and other online programs.
This is so good. I feel like you've just given us a photography masterclass. This is important. I appreciate that, because a lot of people are using ChatGPT to do photos and things these days. People are using AI, they're using photography. They don't know, is this a real picture? Is this a fake picture? Can I see the difference? You're bringing us the real information that people will start considering, so that if they know how to hire someone that wants to do photography for an event, product, real estate, or even Airbnb, then the questions that you're going to ask them is going to determine whether they want to work with you or not. Everybody wants to collect money, which is great, but if I'm able to give you an experience before you pay, that is value added to what you're receiving. And that's what you've given to us. And I really appreciate you for gracing the stage, the room, the podcast show, and being with us today on this amazing episode.
Thank you.
Some people may want to work with you now. They're like, okay, let me go to David. How can they connect with you, and how can they work with you if they want to stay in contact?
Yes, so I am in most social media platforms right now. Instagram, find me David_Pezzat on Instagram. You can find me on Facebook as well. Most important, look at my full portfolio on my website. That's www.davidpezzat.com. Like I said, I opened up a few other categories, not just event photography. I've also been a destination photographer, so if you guys are interested in doing a destination wedding, I travel just about everywhere. You can also find the photography and product photography, which is something that I just opened up and is doing wonders. I'm doing great with that. I got several reviews already on that. The funny thing is that a lot of people are booking me from out of state. They don't even live here for the Airbnb. They're either in California or different states. And they're just saying, hey, is it okay if I just text you the code when you get there, or the code for the front door? I was like, sure. Or they said sometimes they open it with their app as soon as they show up there. The only time that I communicate with them is when I'm turning in the photographs online, which is everything is online, so it works out there.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. I know one question that I forgot to ask, because you mentioned something about online, and a lot of people ask this question. So I want to ask you, what's usually a good average turnaround time when people are taking photos and receiving them? What is the standard?
Sure, most definitely. So for events, it's usually no more than a week for events now. Like I said, it used to be longer than that, but now it's a week, using AI and other capabilities that make the process faster. For Airbnb, it's a way shorter time. Usually it's the next day. I say 48 hours, but surprisingly, it's usually the next day. If it's in the evening, I have it the next day. If it's in the morning, I have it sometimes even that same day.
Thank you so much again. I appreciate you. God bless you for being here. And I look forward to speaking with you and bring you back on the show, God willing.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your time and for doing this. Thank you.
You're welcome.